Okay, so what I want to do now is talk a little bit about why making change is so difficult. And I'm going to use a little bit of technical jargony words, so forgive me. And again, if there's any questions or need explanations, please just let me know. So, one of the things that happens is people have an idea of who they want to be. And this idea of who they want to be is kind of singular. They have the sense that they are one person with a single identity, a single self, a single stream of consciousness. The fact is, though, that we are comprised of different parts of self, right? Different parts of us function in different ways. I interact with my mother one way, my partner another way, at work a different way, with this video in a different way, right? These are all different facets of who I am. And again, I also am comprised of different competing needs. There's a part of me that likes being intellectual, but then there's another part of me that likes to be playful and silly. The issue is, I can't be all these parts, and perhaps not at all, but definitely not at the same time. And so what happens is I have to make a choice about what part of me I want to focus on at any given time. That being said, when you're a child, your parents are socializing you and helping you to be constructed socially in a way that fits into society to be, quote, well adjusted. This is really important because we know what happens when people have parents that don't help them. They often have issues of either becoming a criminal, or perhaps they'll become very promiscuous and just have all sorts of family issues, or they might just do something dumb like jump into a river and drown, right? So there's purpose behind it, and it also limits us becoming who we want to be. Now, at the core of our humanity are natural tensions. One that's very common is the need to be an individual, but also the need to be part of a community. This will continuously live in tension, and you also can imagine that it's always kind of on a seesaw. Now, what happens is, in the Western world, we tend to prefer the individual side of things. It encourages narcissism, materialism. So, that then creates issues around relationships, having quality relationships, and then also people end up tending to feel quite lonely because they're isolating themselves. Now, some people have a need to spend more time alone and to be more individualistic, and some people have a need to be more kind of comforted and in the group. One of the consequences that they've discovered in family therapy techniques, I want to say is Bowenian family systems theory, is that as you're growing up and you start to individuate, you kind of have to separate yourself from the group you're with. Now, when you're as part of a group, you don't have to figure things out yourself. And another part of family systems work is you're an emotional organism. And what that means is if I suddenly become sad and you're in the room with me, you'll probably get a little bit quieter, kind of focus your attention towards me. Now, all of these emotional systems are what they call homeostatic. Now, that word you might remember has to do with, like, say, our body temperature, the oxygen in our blood. It always needs to kind of remain at a very similar level, so that way we can function as an organism. Families get an emotional experience and they try to keep it the same. Now, when you're trying to change and you're trying to discover these other parts of yourself, you'll notice that your family and your environment around you tries to keep it the same. As you're going to express your individuality, the community, the seesaw, will try to keep things the same. Now, I'm not saying one is right or wrong because that has nothing to do with this. What it has to do with is the comfort that you feel with your own lived experience, and also your responsibilities to the people around you. Now, that creates quite the ethical dilemma, and that'll be a conversation for another time. However, what is important to notice in this is that the tension is the natural state of reality that we live in. It is what is there. So, what will happen is, as you're trying to get well and to improve your life in whatever way that might mean, you'll have this idea of where you're going, which is a beautiful thing. However, it's also impossible because you'll have conflicting parts of self. Now, historically, they've talked about this as being such as a shadow self, or the animus anima, the female male parts of the self competing. Um, we all have a need for excitement, and we all have a need for safety and security. Now, we can all think of people who have definitely leaned into one or the other. Again, it's not right or wrong, but it's about finding balance. And in fact, you may recall that very often teenagers often prefer the excitement part, the dopamine part of the enjoyment of life, whereas older folks, and even myself, I don't necessarily love math, so I just kind of lean into the relaxing side of life, right? It's more of a serotonin driven perspective on life. Now, the reason this is important is as you go through your wellness journey, what you'll notice is you will have a series of odd experiences. And let me first say that the simple act of choosing to change your life can often be enough to have very profound beneficial effects to your life. Because if everything had been, quote, homeostatic for a long time, you had been working to keep things the same. By choosing to change, and even having the intention to change, then a lot of times things can free up, and you can have an experience of hope you haven't had, but on the other hand, you can often have a lot more anxiety. They can make it very easy to stop your process. So, just now, I'll give you a handful of suggestions to really make this work for you. First, get a notepad. Put it beside your bed. Second, get a place in your phone where you can make notes. And what I want you to do is anytime you have an unexpected feeling or emotion, an unexpected memory or thought, or an unexpected question, write it down. And here's the reason for that, right? So there's the version of you that you're used to living and experiencing, the one of you that shows up to work every day, the one that's around your family. As you're inviting yourself to grow, you're going to invite other parts of you that often aren't present to be part of your life. And what will happen is they'll just show up in a glimmer. And if you don't make note of them, they'll disappear from your consciousness. You will forget that they ever existed. So, as an example of this, and you might also want to make notes of this also, is dreams. It's scientifically proven everyone dreams. Now, a lot of people don't remember them. And in fact, most people, they'll remember bits and pieces of dreams. And you and everyone else has the ability to improve what they actually remember. And you do that by the moment you wake up making notes. Write it down. You may end up also discovering that your dreams have common themes and patterns. And those may be the unconscious shadow self trying to hold and manage what's actually going on in your life. So, that being said, I strongly encourage you to just start making notes. And when they happen, don't judge them. You may notice yourself feeling anxious about them. You may notice yourself feeling guilty or shameful about them, or you might even notice that you're angry. All the feelings are valid, and those things that are happening in the back of your mind, let them be. They're okay. In the long run, they're not going to harm you. Now, what will end up happening is as you start to notice these different pieces, they actually give you clues of where to go and what to search for. I can give you a couple examples from my own life. I used to have a recurring dream where I would be chased. And what would happen is I would be chased sometimes by zombies, sometimes by people with like saws, weird stuff. And it would happen over and over and over again. And what ended up happening is in the dreams, I would be chased and I would be tired and be worn out, and I'd always be able to defend myself, but I'd never be able to defeat them. And over years, this went on and on. Later, I discovered that particular dream is a form of death anxiety, where, like death, I was being chased and I was always pushing it off, and I could never quite get away from it at the same time. When I started making other changes in my life, then that dream disappeared. Now, another one is I was part of a relationship that wasn't healthy for me. And in that relationship, I would have kind of intrusive thoughts about my ex. And I'd have intentions of trying to be emotionally free, emotionally available for another partner. right? Because I know I can't literally forget them, but I can also be at the place where, while the feelings and emotions and memories of that person don't feel good, they don't control my life. I had the intention of trying to move past. I would then kind of do some different work around my dreams until after a few months, I had a very profound dream that they died. And from that moment, they have not been in my dreams. And while I remember them, and I do have some emotions, they aren't overwhelming or particularly painful. So, make note, and we'll use this to try to help you.